Hello, friends. Welcome to the Cold War Prepper. I'm just a minute early, but we'll do that. See if we can't get people here in time tonight. Um, so I'm sitting here eating my favorite Boom Chicka Pop, sweet and salty kettle corn, and drinking my Walmart black cherry flavored water. Kind of my go-to in the evening. Didn't mean to hit the go live, but as we say back home in El Paso, mierda pasada, or poo-poo happens. But anyhow, hello, Pat Butler. Hello, Rex Logan. Welcome, everybody. So you see my look. I'm back to my look from 2-3 years ago, before I decided that my life ambition was not to shave for a while. I had to store up enough blood to where I could start cutting myself on a regular basis again. I hate shaving, but then again, my wife hates the beard, so that's where we are. We've got 5 people, 6. All right, we're getting up there. People are getting notifications that we've started. Some weird stuff going on. Let me share screen here real quick with you on something that's. I don't know how many of you are aware of what's going on in Iceland, but we're going to share screen, and we're going to go over here to. If I can find it. Oh, there we are. USGS, latest earthquakes. So this is another one of those channels that I kind of watch on a regular basis. It's called. So this is called the USGS earthquake map. Notice all the earthquakes that we've got going on, especially around the Ring of Fire, and then up into the Indo-European plate. So we've got a whole bunch of fives, high fives, 4s, and everything else happening throughout the world. We've also got, of course, the things that are going on up here in Iceland. There aren't any current quakes, but that's because I have this set to where it's only showing 2.5 and above. They've had over 1,000 earthquakes. One of them was a 7.1 just a couple of days ago up here in Iceland. And so, things are no, Iceland's up here. I'm sorry. So things are looking a little bit weird. And as far as the Earth is concerned, we've got this possible pole shift that's happening. And gosh, it's not looking good. So stay aware of earthquakes. Of course, here, if we go here, this is probably White City, New Mexico. Let me see if I can't find that in greater detail here. Where is my tab? There we go. That's got to be White City, New Mexico right there. Mentone, well, same thing. So that's Carlsbad Caverns area, Carlsbad Caverns, New Mexico area. Okay, so just keep your head on that. That's, well, it is Iceland. Iceland's right there. So Iceland is halfway between Sweden and Greenland. So really some weird stuff going on. Gosh, my hair. When I had the barber shave my beard off, I had her cut my hair too. I've never had it this short before, and I can't do anything with it. I've got to go buy some gel or some hairspray or something just to keep it tucked down. Unbelievable. Okay, who else joined us? So Holly Ivans, Diana too, Scott Hummer, welcome. Little Lone Prepper, welcome. And she's always reading my mind. Look at her. She's got that USGS earthquake map up there for you, that link for you. Sumi, welcome. My Prepper Journey, welcome. Okay, so tonight we're talking in this book, and really nice. I love the way they do this. It's just, but we're getting into the Constitution. Okay, so, and this is all annotated out. But I'm going to be using, since we're getting into the actual Constitution itself, I'm just going to start using my little one here, and I can read it. Don't forget, you can get one of these for free from your representative or your senator, and they'll provide this to you for free. So it's just something that's fantastic to have. So we're going to be talking about Article 1, which is the legislature. So Basically, remember that we have three different branches of government. We have the legislature who writes the laws. We have the executive branch that enforces the laws. And then we have the judicial branch that interprets the laws. Hello, Calvin Stevens, Blackjack, North Carolina. I don't know where that is. My best buddy in the Army was from Smithfield, North Carolina. And then when he retired, he left the Army. He went to work for one of the railroad companies there in North Carolina. I think it was Southern Pacific, and as an engineer. And then he retired in Asheville. Gosh, that is such a gorgeous area in the Appalachians of Asheville, North Carolina. I'm in love with that area. Gorgeous. In school, they had us paint these mountains, with different colors of purple and distance and all this. That these things can't be real. This can't be real until I got to North Carolina and saw the Appalachian Mountains and on the Appalachian Trail. That's reality. That's exactly what it looks like looking out to the west, and just unbelievably gorgeous, unbelievably gorgeous. Okay, so let's get into this Article 1, which is the legislature. So Section 1, all legislative powers are herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of of a Senate and a House of Representatives. The House of Representatives shall be comprised of members chosen every other year by the people of the several states, and the electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors in the most numerous branch of the state legislature. No person shall be a representative who shall not have attained the age of 25. So in order to be a representative, you have to be 25 years old. You have to have been 7 years a citizen of the United States. So you have to have been a citizen for 7 years, 25 years old, 7 years a citizen, and you have to be a resident of the state that you're being elected to represent the people of. So those are the three requirements for becoming a U.S. representative. So representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states which may be included within this union, according to the respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding the whole number of free persons, including those bound for service for a term of years, and including Indians not taxed, and 3/5 of all other persons. This is the infamous 3/5 rule that you've heard so much about. So basically what this 3/5 rule is we had a whole bunch of slaves at the time that the Constitution was written. Basically, the northern states became slave-free. The southern states became slave states. And at the same time, the importation of slaves from Africa was prohibited when we adopted the Constitution in 1787. And so that meant that only those slaves who were already here would be allowed to remain in effect. Okay. So the southern states had less population than the northern states. The northern states were a little bit more industrialized, a little bit more densely packed. Southern states, of course, were more agrarian, more dependent upon human labor, the physical manual labor out in the fields than were the northern states. So because they had the preponderance of the slaves, and the slaves were not free and could not vote, they said, we deserve equality as far as representation. And so what they came up with was the 3/5 rule. So for every 5 slaves, you had that represented 3 free people as far as the number counting for representation by a U.S. representative. Now remember, we'll get into it here a little bit. 1 representative for every 30,000 population. The actual enumeration shall be made within 3 years after the first meeting of the Congress. And so basically, then we get into the census of every 10 years. The number of representatives shall not exceed 1 for every 30,000 citizens. But each state shall have at least 1 representative. So even if you didn't have 30,000 representatives, like later on Wyoming, you still had one representative. This also comes into play with the District of Columbia, regardless of, when it was initially set up, it had one representative because it had less than 30,000 population. The state of New Hampshire shall be entitled to choose 3 representatives. Massachusetts 8. Now, this is basically at the time of the signing of the Constitution. Rhode Island, Providence Plantations 1. Connecticut 5. New York 6. New Jersey 4. Pennsylvania 8. Delaware 1. Maryland 6. Virginia 10. North Carolina 5. South Carolina 5. And Georgia 3. So that was based upon the population at the time that the Constitution was passed. When a vacancy happens in the representation from any state, the executive authority thereof shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies. So basically, if a U.S. representative from a state passes away or becomes incapacitated during their service, then the governor of that state gets to appoint somebody as their alternate until such time as another election is held. Oh, last week, I forgot to tell you, I did some research. Last week, somebody asked the difference between, hello, Maggie, welcome. The difference between a commonwealth and a state, and everything I've come up with is, other than the spelling, there's no difference. So they're both basically the same thing, just that's the terminology that they chose. The House of Representatives shall choose their own speaker and other officers and shall have the sole power of impeachment. Okay, so what is impeachment? Think of impeachment as being a political version of a grand jury, an indictment. So when you impeach somebody, you're indicting that person. Then once the indictment is fulfilled, then it goes to the Senate for a jury trial. Jury trial is, I guess, the closest thing. We're just going to call it a trial. It's going to go to a trial of the Senate. And you're going to find out that a couple of strange things happen when it becomes a trial in the Senate. But Section 3, the Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, chosen by the legislature thereof. Now remember, this is going to change later with an amendment. For 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. Immediately after they shall be assembled to consequence of the first election, they shall be divided as equally as may be into 3 classes. So when we talk about classes, remember we have the representatives elected every 2 years, okay? So then that means that you're going to divide up the senators into 3 different classes, class A, B, or C. So the first one is going to be in the class that gets elected here and serves for those 2 years, right? Then the second class, their election is 2 years after that, and the third class is 2 years after that. So that 1/3 of the Senate is being replaced every 2 years when we're replacing the entirety of the House of Representatives. I hope I explained that in a way that's not too confusing. 1/3 of the Senate gets elected every 2 years, okay? So it's different. Hello, Princess Kicking Butt. Welcome. Let me see, who else have I missed? Cats and Prepping. Welcome. So that's what those classes are, just when they're going to be elected. Okay. Let me see here. No person shall be a senator who shall not have attained the age of 30 years. So it's 25 for a representative, 30 for a senator. And it has been 9 years a citizen of the United States. So 7 years a senator for 7 years a citizen for a representative, 9 years a citizen for a senator, and shall be an inhabitant of that state for which he shall be chosen. So that's causing a little bit of problem for the new senator who's replacing Feinstein from California, because the official residence of that senator is in Maryland. But Gavin Newsom selected the person to represent be Feinstein's replacement, who is a resident of Maryland and going to be representing California. So got to do some quick thinking here on how we're going to make that work. So the Vice President of the United States shall be President of the Senate, but shall have no vote unless there is an equal division. So because it's a multiple of 2, right? And we have 50 states right now, 2 senators per state. If there's a 50-50 split on the vote, then the vice president gets to be the tiebreaker. We saw that would have happened in the last election, in the 2020 election. Had there been a split in the impeachment vote, then the vice president would have had the deciding vote on whether or not that would have been guilty or not guilty. The Senate shall choose their officers and also a president pro tempore in the absence of the vice president. So that's usually the Senate majority leader is going to be the president pro tempore or temporary president, and or when he shall exercise the office of the president of the United States. So if the vice president is temporarily filling the job as president, then he can't fulfill the job as vice president and be president of the Senate. So then you have to have a temporary president of the Senate, which is going to be the Senate majority leader under current rules. It would be nice if we all followed the Constitution. If you ask me my party is the Constitutionalist Party. If it's not in, it's got to be in the Constitution. We got to follow that. This is the supreme. I mean, that's Article 1, Section 1, right? We talked about that last week. Let me see. Where is it? No, it's Article 5. That the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. That's just the way it is. Okay, here we go. So the Senate shall have, this is right after the vice president being the president pro tempore. And so now we get to the Senate shall have the sole power to try an impeachment. When sitting for that purpose, they shall be on oath of affirmation. When the president of the United States is tried, the chief justice shall preside over the Senate. And no person shall be convicted without the concurrence of 2/3 of the members present. So you only need a simple majority, okay, on the indictment to say we're impeaching this president. So that impeachment that gets handed over to the Senate. If it's an impeachment for the president, it must have the Chief Justice sitting as the president pro tempore of the Senate for that trial, okay? And they have to have 2/3 in order to convict. So in this case, it would be 67 of the senators have to vote to convict in order to have a conviction. Hello, East Tennessee Preparedness. Welcome. Glad you can listen in. And oath of affirmation means that they're taking an oath. They're going to put their hand on the Bible, that they do solemnly swear, just like you would for any other judicial type of an oath that you're going to do, everything according to the book and up above board and all that kinds of stuff, and tell the truth and all that kinds of stuff. Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to the normal removal from office. Now, remember, they wanted to do some indictments where they were going to have some felony convictions in order to keep him from running for president ever again. And that is contra to the Constitution. All they can do is remove them from office. So the second impeachment that was done was purely political, simply because he was going to be removed from office in 7 days after the Senate met in any way. So all they were going to do was speed that process up by 7 days and have the vice president sit in as president for 7 days. So it wasn't going to accomplish anything. So it was kind of a big ruse. It was a kangaroo court. Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal from office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. But the party convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to law. So what it says is if the law was broken, then the only thing the Senate can do is remove them from office, okay? Then if there is a law broken, then they have to have that law tried in a civil or in a criminal court, not in the Senate. Does that make sense? Absolutely correct, Maggie. Absolutely correct. And I believe that's Article 5. Let me check. Let me make sure. Like I know what I'm talking about. I'm sorry. Article 6. The Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. So it says it, yeah, absolutely. That the laws and Constitution are the supreme law of the land. So here's a tricky one for you. The federal law says that marijuana is illegal. States are passing laws saying that it is legal. According to Article 6 of the Constitution, because there's a federal law saying that marijuana is illegal, are these state laws really legal? It's a question for you. Okay, Section 4, Article 1, Section 4. The times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed by each state. The Congress shall assemble at least once every year, and such meetings shall be on the first Monday in December, unless they shall by law select a different day. Section 5. Each house shall be the judge of the elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members. A majority of each shall constitute a quorum to do business, but a smaller number may adjourn from day to day and may be authorized to compel the attendance to absent members in such manner and under such penalties as each house may provide. So like here in Texas, we've had a couple times where they've wanted to have a bill passed, but they can't get a quorum because one party decides that they aren't going to play. So they just up and go to a different state for the election. And that way you don't have a quorum available to do the vote. You can't legally vote unless you have, 2/3 of the House present or Legislature present. So if 1/3 just ups and leaves the state, there's nothing you can do about it. You can't hold an election. It won't have any binding status. So the way that the federal government does that is they say, we can compel you by law to be here. Now, let's take this Article 5 and let's go back 280 years, almost 240 years. Remember that we're all along the eastern seaboard. The primary mode of travel is a horse. And so Congress is meeting on a regular basis, but the majority of the work of the congressman and the senator was back in their home state. So they would travel to DC, have votes on issues and things like that, and they would travel back home. So it wasn't like we have now where you have people residing in DC and coming home on the weekends to see how their constituents feel. These people actually represented their constituents. They had to go back and live among them for quite a while. And then it was quite an event to go to DC for some of the things that they had to go to DC for. Yeah, and not only law enforcement, but also the military. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the officers appointed over me in accordance with the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God. Not that I thought that was one of the most important oaths I've ever taken and memorized it, but that's the oath. You're exactly right. So basically what it was is, and we're going to get into that because in reality, Roe v. Wade was incorrectly decided in the first place. Let me see. Mm. Right, right, because that's a federal law. The federal government has said that marijuana is a controlled substance, and so basically, if you are in California where it is quote legal, that all that means is that the California law enforcement officers cannot arrest you for it. However, a federal officer, FBI, DEA, any of those guys can arrest you for it. So, because you're in violation of a federal law. Usually what they're going to do is they're going to delegate that authority down to the states for the states to prosecute. Okay. The senators and representatives shall receive compensation for their services to be ascertained by law and paid out of the Treasury of the United States. They shall, in all cases, except for treason, felony, and breach of the peace, be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the sessions of their respective houses, and in going to and returning from the same, and for any speech or debate in either house. They shall not be questioned in any other place. No senator or representative shall, during the time for which he was elected, be appointed to any civil office under the authority of the United States. So you can't have two jobs for the federal government at the same time, which shall have been created, or the emoluments whereof shall have been increased during such time, and no person holding any office under the United States shall be a member of either house during his continuance in office. So let's say I am the director of the FBI and I get elected to be a representative. Before I can take the oath of office to become a representative, I have to leave my job as director of the FBI. Same thing for the vice versa of that. If I am a representative and the president calls me and says, hey, I would like for you to become the director of the FBI, I have to resign my job as an elected representative of wherever I'm representing, and then I can accept the job as the director of the FBI. I don't know Canadian laws, Sumi. I'm sorry. I guess I'm kind of have my blinders on. I pay attention to U.S. Here's one. This is Obamacare. Okay. Remember, Obamacare was Senate Bill 2. Okay. All bills raising revenue, taxes, income of any kind, funding for Obamacare, which was inside the bill, shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments as on other bills. So, according to Section 7 of Article 1, if it involves the federal government taking in any kind of money, tax, revenue, anything, fees, it has to originate in the House of Representatives. The Senate, remember, now we're going to get into this in a bit. The bill gets passed in the House, and then it gets sent over to the Senate. Now, the Senate has to take that bill up, and they can propose a counter bill. Then it goes into conference, where the two sit down and then hammer out what they're going to come up with as far as a final bill. And final bills sometimes don't look anything like the original one that was passed in the House, by the way. So the Senate can offer amendments, they can offer a new bill, they can offer a counter bill or anything else, but the bill has to originate in the House if it's going to raise any kind of revenue for the government. So cats and prepping, the answer to your question is any form. You cannot have two offices at the same time that are governmental, okay? And that goes for anything. Like, for example, I cannot be a military officer on active duty and a representative at the same time. I can only be one or the other, okay? Yes, and you're absolutely right, because that's a federal law. And anytime so here's one. When we talk about the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1933, which basically is overtime, okay? The way the bill is written, as long as you have no commerce outside of the state, you don't have to pay the federal minimum wage, okay? But let's define commerce outside the state. So the way they define it now is, let's say that my company uses AT&T, and AT&T's headquarters is in Chicago, okay? If I make a payment to AT&T in Chicago from my office in Austin, Texas, I am now involved in interstate commerce and therefore am subject to the 1933 Fair Labor Standards Act and the minimum wages as adopted that currently exist. Now, if I didn't have to pay that phone bill to them, let's say I all of my phone bill is Southwestern Bell, everything else I do is only inside the state of Texas, and I pay that bill to Southwestern Bell in Dallas, okay, or in San Antonio, I think is where their actual headquarters is. Now, all of a sudden, I don't have to because I'm not conducting interstate commerce. What happens if somebody orders something from me and I ship it across state lines? Now, once again, I become involved in interstate commerce. Now, all of a sudden, that 1933 bill becomes in effect for me as well. So it gets kind of convoluted. Some of them are ex-CIA, some of them are ex-Navy SEALs. I know we've got 2 representatives who are ex-Navy SEALs. Might even have more than that. I'm unaware of that. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, and so, you know, if you read Mark Levin's books, and God, he's got some really good ones, you know, he makes a case for line item veto. I'm against line item veto. I'm also against, I think we should have purely clean bills. And so what happens is you've got something like the Defense Appropriations Act, okay, which is a bill in and of itself. So you'd think that the Defense Appropriations Act, the only thing that's going to be in the Defense Appropriations Act are things concerning our national defense. Well, once, in order to get Nancy Pelosi's vote, they had to add a rider to the Defense Authorization Act. And that rider was that they would give the city of San Francisco a couple $1 million to extend the BART rail system, okay? And BART rail system is the Bay Area Rapid Transit, their train system. So it just so happens, where is this BART rail system, this new BART rail line going to go? It's going to go right past this building that her husband owns. It's going to triple its value. And it's going to go right down to her #1 donor, Salesforce USA. And so Salesforce USA, who is one of her biggest donors, all of a sudden gets a major train station on their property, courtesy of the federal government. And so now all of their employees get to ride BART, right, and have access to it. They don't have to worry about driving and parking and everything else, especially on Highway 101 in California. And so major thing. But in order to get Nancy's vote for the Defense Appropriations Act, they had to basically build infrastructure that supported her biggest donors and increased her husband's net worth. So that's the way those bills work. Let me see. Then it talks about how every bill shall have passed the House of Representatives and the Senate, shall, before it becomes a law, be presented to the President of the United States. And if he approves it, he shall sign it. But if not, he shall return it with his objections to the House in which it will have originated, who shall enter the objections at large on their journal and proceed to reconsider it. If after reconsideration 2/3 of the House shall agree to pass the bill, it shall be sent together with the objections to the other House, by which it shall likewise be reconsidered, and if approved by 2/3 of that House, it shall become a law. But in all such cases, the votes of both houses shall be determined by yeas and nays, and the names of the persons voting for and against the bill shall be entered on the journal of each House respectively. If any bill shall not be returned by the President within 10 days after it shall have been presented to him, the same bill shall be a law, in like manner as if he had signed it, wherein the Congress by their adjournment prevent to return, in which case it shall not be a law. So it's called a pocket veto. So let's talk about the first part. The first part is a veto. So the House and the Senate pass a bill, okay? They send it to the President. The President's of a differing party. The President says, no, I object to this bill, and here's the reason why, and he sends it back. He vetoes it, is what the action is called. Now it goes back to the House that originated it, whether it be the Senate or the House of Representatives. They take into consideration his veto. They can change it. They can amend it. They can take out the portion that he objected to. I'm using he generically here, not necessarily specifically male, but they then can reconsider that, delete it, whatever. Then they vote on it. If 2/3 of them vote on the finalized bill, then it's deemed passed, and they pass it over to the other House. If the other House takes it into consideration and they vote on it, and 2/3 of them support that bill, now you have overridden the President's veto. So there's no need for a presidential signature or approval because the veto has been overruled by Congress. And so that bill is passed, okay? Now, there's something called a pocket veto. So basically, you send a bill to the President says, I can't support this. This is stupid. But he knows that if he vetoes it and sends it back, that the House is going to pass it, and so is the Senate. So his veto is going to be overruled. Well, politically speaking, that's not a good thing to do. So what he does is a pocket veto. He just keeps it in his pocket for 10 days. And then he doesn't support it. He doesn't veto it, but the veto is considered overturned and it's passed. Okay. So it's called a pocket veto. Every order, resolution, or vote to which the concurrence of the Senate and House of Representatives may be necessary shall be presented to the President of the United States, and before the same shall take effect, shall be approved by him, or being disapproved by him, shall be repassed by 2/3 of the Senate and House of Representatives according to the rules and limitations prescribed earlier. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Let me check up on chat here, see where we are. Isn't that the truth? I have not seen that, but that does make sense. I've heard rumors of it, but I have not seen that. A lot of times we have bills, they look good externally, and the intentions are there. But then when you get down to it, basically it's not that great. For example, the protecting us against people with box cutters and airplanes. Look at all the rights that were given up, in order to protect us from people with box cutters. Okay. So here's the tough one. Okay. Remember that we just got rid of a king. We just got rid of the parliament, the House of Lords, who were dictating things down to the people and telling them exactly what they could and could not do. And so if you take a look at the Bill of Rights, you take a look at the Constitution, what we wanted to do, hello, Claude, welcome. What we wanted to do is we wanted to limit the power of the federal government, but still have a strong central government that could defend us in case we were ever attacked or anything like that. So in Article 1, Section 8, we have the limiting powers of Congress. So these are the only things that Congress is allowed to do. Okay, so these are the things that we gave Congress permission to do. So let me get into this, because this is almost 2 pages long. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. Now, the general welfare of the United States, that's what a lot of times they use to pass some of these other laws, like Obamacare. Okay. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. So that's one. The next one, to borrow money on the credit of the United States, to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states. So they can't regulate commerce inside a state, only if it crosses state lines, okay? And with the Indian tribes. To establish a uniform rule of naturalization, or how to become a citizen, and uniform laws on the subject of bankruptcies throughout the United States. So the laws on bankruptcy are the same through all 50 states. To coin money, regulate the value thereof and of foreign coin, and fix the standard of weights and measures. Here's a tricky one for you. How many of you know that the United States officially, as an act of Congress, changed our system so that we are officially on the metric system, and that we're supposed to be posting all of our signs in kilometers per hour, and we're supposed to be measuring everything in grams and kilograms and not in ounces and pounds. And that was to be in full effect in 1980. And we still have not yet done it. So just something that kind of weird. They passed a law that we were going to be like the rest of the world and be on the metric system. And we would accomplish that by January 1st, 1980, and we still haven't done it. Now, let me see. To provide for the punishment of counterfeiting the securities and current coin of the United States, to establish post offices and post roads, toll roads, to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing the limited times to authors and investors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries, better known as the copyright laws, okay? So basically all that intellectual value that you put into a painting or into writing a song or into recording a song or into writing a poem or writing a book, for a period of 30 years, all the revenue that's made from that belongs to the author. And then after 30 years, it goes away. So that's the copyright laws. So you should be entitled to be the sole person making money off of your intellectual property for a period of up to 30 years. Princess Kicking Butt. And another thing you need to do is point out Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution. That's another real good one you can use to support what you're talking about there. Let me see. to constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court. So they establish, the federal courts, the district courts and all that kinds of stuff. To define and punish piracy and felonies committed on the high seas and offenses against the law of nations. To declare war. Now, here's a tricky one for you. When was the last time the U.S. declared war? Under President FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, in 1942, we declared war against Hungary, Romania, and Austria as part of the Axis powers. We have not had a declaration of war since then, and look at all the fighting that we've been doing ever since then. Hello, David Lynn, welcome. Maggie says, me too, okay. So they have the authority to declare war. Make rules concerning captures on land and water, to grant letters of marque and letters of reprisal, to raise and support armies, but no apportionment of money for that use, for the use of raising an army, shall be for longer term than 2 years. So no Defense Appropriations Act can last longer than 2 years, okay? To provide and maintain a navy, to make rules for the government and regulation of the land and naval forces, to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the land, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. So we've got two things here. We've got an army, the standing army, the regular army, and then we've got a militia, okay? So the militia back then were basically the Minutemen. You had your musket at the corner of the house. When you were called, you grabbed your musket and you went to the defense of your local organization, your local community. You were part of that militia that helped defend against Indian invasions, foreign invasions, or anything like that. So remember, that's what they're talking about when we get into the Second Amendment, and it says a well-regulated militia being the cause, right? That's the reason why we should all have the right to bear arms. So what is it that the militia is doing? They're doing military service. So, you hear all this stuff right now about, well, you shouldn't have military style weapons for the Second Amendment because, but that's not what it says. It says you're part of the militia. And so here in Article 1, Section 8, it defines who the militia is. You're part of the militia. So therefore, since you're being called to be part of the military in defense of the country, you should have a military style weapon, even though what they're really doing is they're taking a sporting weapon that looks like a military weapon and declaring it a military weapon. Okay. Reserving to the states, respectively, the appointment of the officers and the authority of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress. So the militia belongs to the states. The officers of the militia are appointed by the states, commissioned by the states, and then can be called up by the president. Next one, to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district, not exceeding 10 miles square, as may by session of particular states and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of the government of the federal United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. Okay, so you can have a representative, and Congress has full authority over all laws for all federal properties, forts, the District of Columbia, naval bases, arsenals, armories, all that kinds of stuff. That is all falls under federal jurisdiction, not state, which is why you can go onto a federal military installation and consume alcohol, consume beer at least at 18 years old, even though the state may have a law saying it's 21, because you're not in the state, you're on federal property, and so federal laws prevail. To make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers, and all powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States, or in any department or officer thereof. So that's what they're allowed to do. If it's not in Article 1, Section 8, then they aren't allowed to do it. Okay, so let's take a look at the Department of Transportation, okay, and roads, right? Do you remember earlier? It's like the third paragraph of things that the Congress is authorized to do. They're allowed to have post offices and post roads, toll roads. So they can have federal toll roads, okay, but they can't, everything else belongs to the state. When I was growing up, you could tell when you left Texas and went into New Mexico or went into Oklahoma, especially, the roads just changed. Boom. I mean, it went from great, best roads in the U.S. to, barely able to drive on it. I honest to God think I would like to have the job of the pothole digger in Maryland for the Baltimore-Washington Parkway. I used to drive the Baltimore-Washington Parkway to work when I worked at NSA. And I tell you what, in Maryland, you need a front end alignment every 3 months. Okay, I can tell you that much. But anyhow, so that's Article 1, Section 8. Nowhere in there does it give the Department of Transportation the authority to build roads, interstate system, or anything else. The interstate system was passed as part of the military protocol under President Eisenhower. So that was in a Defense Appropriations Act. The interstate system is there for the sole purpose, okay, it's federally funded for the sole purpose of rapidly moving defensive forces from one portion of the United States to another, okay? So that's the whole reason that the interstate system was created, was so our military could rapidly move from one area to another in defense of the United States. There is a new interstate coming out, and I forget the number. I think it's 14, Interstate 14, and it's going to basically start, if I'm not mistaken, it's going to basically start in Midland, Odessa, cut down through Goodfellow Air Force Base in San Angelo, Texas, over to Fort Hood, to Fort Polk, but it's going to connect all the southern forts and air bases along the southern line of the U.S. So so that's part of that same reasoning and rationale is it's there for the defense of the United States. Let me get up here and check. My problem when I was in New Jersey is that I have never found a two-way road in New Jersey. It seems to me like all the roads in New Jersey are one way. I was staying in a hotel at Newark, and we came in when we did work in New York, came in northeast part of Newark Airport, and that road was one way. We had to go all the way around the Newark Airport to get to our hotel. If we could have just turned left, it would have been a half a mile. But because of the one-way roads, it took us like 6 or 7 miles to get to our hotel once we could see it. Okay, Article 1, Section 9. The migration or importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by the Congress prior to the year 1808. But a tax or duty may be imposed on such importation not exceeding $10 for each person. So this is basically, it says that you could import slaves until 1808. The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion of public safety may require it. No bill of attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed. No capitation or other direct tax shall be laid unless in proportion to the census or enumeration thereof before directed to be taken. So that was replaced basically by the income tax law. No tax or duty shall be laid on articles exported from any state. So you can't tax exports. No preference shall be given by any regulation of commerce or revenue to the ports of one state over those of another. And so the federal government can't say we're going to have an import fee. It's going to be lower in Boston because those poor people need the money than it is going to be in Roanoke, Virginia, because they got plenty of traffic. Okay. So if they have an import tax, it has to be the same at every port. And now the same thing applies with when we have airports, okay? All import taxes have to be the same, consistent throughout the U.S. West Coast, East Coast, Gulf, Canadian border, all that kinds of stuff. No money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequences of appropriations made by law. So you can't just take money out of the Treasury. You got to have a bill saying that you can. And a regular statement on account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. When's the last time you saw the actual budget of the U.S.? Section 10. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque or reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligation of contracts, or grant any title of nobility. No state shall, without the consent of the Congress, lay any imposts or duties or imports or exports, except what may be absolutely necessary for executing its inspection laws. And the net produce of all duties and imposts laid by any state on imports or exports shall be for the use of the Treasury of the United States, and all such laws shall be subject to the revision and control of the Congress. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships in time of war or peace, or ships of war in time of peace, enter into any agreement or compact with another state or with a foreign power, or engage in war unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit to delay. So this is basically the portion that Texas is using now to build our own border wall, in the fact that we have asked the federal government to protect us from an invasion of illegal aliens, and the federal government has refused. So therefore, using Article 1, Section 10, Texas is saying, federal government, we've asked you to do it. You're supposed to do it under the Constitution. And according to Article 1, Section 10, if you don't do it, we can do it ourselves. And so that's the basis of what we're doing here in Texas right now. It says we can't keep troops or ships of war in time of peace without the approval of Congress. So Congress came up with what we call the oh gosh, my mind just went blank, and we've been talking about it earlier. Second Amendment, militia, the Militia Act. Okay, so we've had three different militia acts, and each one kind of changes, updates, and reconsolidates it. But so the Congress has authorized us to have a militia. So each state has their own militia: Air National Guard, Marines, Navy, Army National Guard. Texas also has its own state guard. And so the state guard is not subject to the federal government. That was one of the things that was we came to an agreement on when we entered into the Union, was that we could maintain our own army. And so there is such thing as the Texas State Guard. I thought that by enlisting in the Texas State Guard, I would get a deferment from the draft in 1970, but I was wrong. It's not considered the same thing as the Texas National Guard. Let me catch up. So that's the end of Article 1. That's all we're going to cover this evening. Catch up on the chat here. Yeah, one of the funny things, Maggie, is we have all these new toll roads here in Texas, and they're all owned by a Spanish company. They're not even owned by the U.S. One of the things I did find out, however, was when I was in Oklahoma and in Missouri, is with my Texas toll tag on my windshield, the Texas toll tag is good in Oklahoma and in Missouri. So I was able to drive all their toll roads, and it was automatically deducted from my toll tag. I don't do Bud Light. There are a couple of beers I don't do, and Bud Light is one of them. I don't do Schlitz. I stopped doing Anheuser-Busch. A lot of people don't realize it, but back in the late 60s, early 70s, they said that they were the sportsman's beer, but they were strong advocates of gun control. And so I figured that was a hypocritical move on their part. So I didn't drink any of their beer from that point on. I was kind of a Coors Light guy, Coors Light guy, but that was back when you couldn't get it anywhere east of the Mountain Time Zone. And then I really got into German beers after being assigned in Germany, and I really like the Mexican beers. So I'm also a big fan of Lone Star, which is one of the very few top malts that are still made in the U.S. So let me see here. Hello, Shenanigans. Welcome. Well, and it's not even a bill, Princess Kicking Butt. And so what he's trying to do is he's trying to do it through an executive order. And so the executive order only affects federal agencies, okay? So what has happened is Congress passes a law and they say, okay, we're going to create the EPA. When they create the EPA and they pass that legislation, they also give to them what's called rulemaking authority. Now, rulemaking authority is just another way of saying lawmaking authority, okay? Because as long as they publish it in the Federal Register and do all the other legal juxtapositions they have to do, once that rule is passed, it becomes law, enforceable by that agency or any other agency that they delegate. So basically, Congress says, okay, you can give loans to students. We're going to create this entity to give the student loans. That entity is going to be supervised by the President of the United States. And so he is this is the executive branch. They're going to do the execution of the bill that Congress passed. Well, now there's funding requirements inside that bill. So the president is saying, I don't want you to enforce the funding portion of the bill that Congress passed. And that's where we have the problem is he doesn't have that authority to forgive the loans in the first place. So, that's going to be a major problem. I'm going to disagree with you here, Maggie. Um, I was buying silver in my last purchase before I sold my store. And I'm going to say it was 5 years ago. I was buying silver at $14 an ounce. And right now, silver's selling for $25 an ounce. It's almost doubled in the last 5 years. Gold, on the other hand, has not had that significant of an increase. Gold was right at $2,900, $3,000 an ounce. It's still significantly the same, pretty much the same. It has had, if anything, 1% increase over the course of the last 5 years. Silver has increased almost 100%. Gold has not hardly increased at all. I bought a rifle from a friend and I gave him 13 ounces of silver for that rifle. He made out extremely well because of the price of rifle. And not only has the price of silver itself gone up, but I was buying 6 mercury dimes, 90% mercury dimes every week. And I was getting 6 mercury dimes plus commission. And then I was usually getting some sort of a quarter or a $0.50. I was spending about $10 a week. Now you can't even get 6 mercury dimes for $10. So yeah, prices have really gone up. But remember back here, okay, let's go back to Article 1. I think it's Section 9. That the states can only use gold and silver to pay their bills. Where is it? I'm not going to find it right now, but it's either Section Article 9 or Article 1, Section 9 or Section 10. I agree with you there. We are not being protected against foreign invasion. Okay. Gosh, all kinds of great comments here. King Ludwig dark beer. All right. I'll tell you what, it's one of the best things about being assigned to Germany is fantastic beer and fantastic wines. Germans are 95, 99% white wines. Someday I'll give you a class on how to read a German wine label, but you know exactly what that wine is going to taste like by reading the label. A lot of other ones you kind of have to guess, but that is really great. Love German white wines. Okay, so it looks like we are there. So, yeah, we've got up north of us here just a little bit. We've got a little town called Wahlberg, Wahlburg, and they have Wahlberg. In Texas, we say Wahlberg, although in German it's Wahlberg. W's in German are pronounced V, like a V, and a V in German is pronounced like an F. So it's Volkswagen is how they say it in Germany. But anyhow, there is an authentic Bavarian restaurant, beer garden, everything else in Wahlberg. And so I can go up there and I can get authentic German beers. They have Dunkelhocker and a couple other German beers. Spatenbräu, which is basically from Munich. And so great beers. We love going up there. As a matter of fact, we got a family we're going up there with Saturday. Go outside before it gets too cold to go outside in the beer tent. And they have an Oompa band, and you can sit out there and eat Wurst under the tent and drink beer. And, it's Oktoberfest, Munich style all over again. So that's great. Okay. Book of Numbers, chapter 6, verse 24, 25, 26. See if I can find it here in El Biblio. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and give you peace. Do me a favor, keep your head on a swivel. Things are really heating up. We had more attacks on U.S. bases today in Syria. The United States retaliated and fired back on Syrian forces and Iranian forces, the Iranian Republican Guards. So there is direct conflict now between U.S. and Iran as far as ground forces in Syria. We've got 3 aircraft carrier groups within striking range of Iran and Lebanon. Things are really heating up. So say your prayers, keep your head on a swivel, just prep to the max. Don't go in debt. Okay. Don't max out your credit card or anything. Do what you can with what you have. Prep sensibly, but prep. And just remember that we're all in this together so we can come out the other end together. Please be kind, polite, and respectful to each other. And thank you. God, what a great chat group you are. Thank you for supporting each other in the chat. Thank you for respecting each other in the chat. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. We'll see you tomorrow night. We're talking about 2 very critical things in nuclear war survival skills. We're talking about water and we're talking about food. So there's going to be 2 critical things. We could probably do that in about 4 hours. We're going to try to get it done in 1. So we're going to come out of this together, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.